The starship Eos drifted silently through the vast expanse of space, its sleek metallic hull reflecting the faint glow of a distant sun. Inside, Captain Leora Vance stood at the helm, her sharp green eyes scanning the endless sea of stars displayed on the main viewport. She was a woman defined by discipline and precision, traits that had earned her the respect and occasional wariness of her crew. For years, she had led missions to uncharted corners of the galaxy, yet something about this particular journey felt different. Perhaps it was the weight of expectation pressing down on her shoulders, or perhaps it was the nagging sense of unease that had settled in her chest since they entered this sector. The planet below them was unlike any they had encountered before. Shrouded in thick layers of swirling mist, it appeared almost ghostly against the backdrop of empty space. Officially designated as PXS 427, the planet had been flagged for exploration due to unusual energy readings detected during a previous flyby. To the crew of the Eos, it was simply another stop on their interstellar map, a routine survey mission meant to gather data and move on. But as Leora gazed down at the mysterious orb, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it than met the eye. "Captain, we're ready for descent," came the voice of Lieutenant Cade Rennick, her second in command. His tone was steady, though his posture betrayed a hint of impatience. Cade wasn't one for delays. He preferred action over contemplation. Still, Leora hesitated. Something about the atmosphere of the planet unsettled her. Not fear exactly, but a quiet anticipation, like standing on the edge of a precipice. "Proceed with caution," she finally said, her voice firm despite the unease gnawing at her insides. "We don't know what we're walking into." Minutes later, the landing module touched down on the surface with a soft hiss. The air outside was cool and damp, carrying with it the faint scent of minerals and something else, something unidentifiable yet strangely familiar. As Leora stepped out onto the alien terrain, her boots sinking slightly into the spongy ground, she scanned her surroundings. The landscape was eerily silent, save for the occasional rustle of wind weaving through jagged rock formations. Everything seemed frozen in time, untouched by life, or so it appeared. It wasn't long before they stumbled upon the ruins. Nestled within a shallow valley, the crumbling structures rose from the earth like forgotten monuments to some ancient civilization. Their surfaces were etched with intricate patterns that glowed faintly blue, pulsating in rhythm with no discernible source. The sight sent a shiver down Leora's spine, though she couldn't say why. There was an aura of otherworldly significance here, as if the very air hummed with secrets waiting to be uncovered. As the team spread out to begin their investigation, Leora found herself drawn toward the largest structure, a towering archway adorned with glowing symbols that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. Her gloved hand hovered inches above the surface, hesitant to make contact. It was then that she heard it, a whisper, soft and melodic, cutting through the silence like a blade. "You are not like the others. You feel different." Leora spun around, heart pounding in her chest. Standing several paces away was a figure cloaked in shimmering silver fabric, her form illuminated by the faint light emanating from the ruins. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes, large and luminous, held an intelligence that transcended language. Though her lips never moved, the words echoed clearly in Leora's mind, bypassing all barriers of communication. For a moment, Leora could only stare, caught between awe and disbelief. This being, this alien, was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. She radiated calmness, yet there was an intensity in her gaze that made Leora feel exposed, as though every thought and emotion lay bare before her. Slowly, the alien extended a slender hand, palm facing upward, as if inviting Leora to take it. Behind her, the rest of the team froze, unsure of how to react. Cade's hand hovered near his sidearm, while the scientists exchanged nervous glances, but Leora didn't move. Instead, she locked eyes with the stranger, searching for answers in those luminous depths. "What do you mean?" Leora asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil brewing inside her. "Who are you?" The alien tilted her head slightly, studying Leora with an expression that bordered on curiosity. Then, without another word, she turned and began walking deeper into the ruins, leaving behind a trail of faintly glowing footprints. For reasons she couldn't explain, Leora followed, ignoring the protests of her crew. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though gravity itself conspired to keep her rooted in place. Yet, she pressed on, driven by a force she neither understood nor questioned. When they reached the center of the ruins, the alien stopped and turned to face her once more. Her presence filled the space, commanding attention without effort. Leora opened her mouth to speak, but the alien raised a finger to silence her. Then, with a final cryptic glance, she vanished into thin air, leaving Leora alone amidst the glowing ruins. The return to the Eos was a blur of questions and tension. Leora's mind raced as she replayed the encounter in her head. The alien woman's piercing gaze, her cryptic words, and the way she had simply vanished into nothingness. The rest of the team buzzed with theories and unease, their voices overlapping like an orchestra out of sync. Lieutenant Cade Rennick was the loudest among them, his deep voice carrying across the landing module as they prepared for departure. "What exactly happened down there?" Cade demanded, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His sharp blue eyes bore into Leora, searching for answers she wasn't sure she could give. "You just followed her, without even consulting us." Leora clenched her jaw, but kept her tone measured. "She didn't pose a threat," she replied, though the statement felt more like a question than a fact. "And if you'd seen what I did—" "Captain," interrupted Dr. Mira Hale, the ship's xenobiologist, her tone softer but no less urgent. "This is unprecedented. An alien life form capable of telepathy, energy manipulation, and possibly dimensional travel. We need to understand her motives before we jump to conclusions." Cade scoffed under his breath. "Or maybe we should have left when we had the chance. For all we know, she's some kind of scout, or worse." Leora ignored him, focusing instead on Mira. "She said something to me," Leora admitted, her voice quieter now. "Something personal. She said, 'You are not like the others.'" Mira's brow furrowed, intrigued. "That doesn't sound like a random observation. It implies recognition, or at least perception beyond surface-level interaction." As the debate continued, Salus, the name the alien had given herself during their brief exchange, became both a subject of fascination and suspicion aboard the Eos. When Leora insisted on bringing her aboard after another unexpected appearance outside the ship, the crew's reactions were mixed. Some, like Mira, saw an opportunity to study an entirely new species. Others, particularly Cade, viewed her presence as a potential hazard. Salus moved through the corridors of the Eos with an ethereal grace, her movements deliberate yet unhurried. Her silvery robes shimmered faintly under the artificial lights, drawing stares wherever she went. She rarely spoke aloud, preferring to communicate directly into minds, a skill that unnerved many of the crew members. Despite this, she seemed oddly passive, content to observe rather than engage. Yet her focus remained fixed on Leora, watching her every move with an intensity that made the captain uneasy. At first, Leora tried to avoid Salus, retreating to her quarters or burying herself in mission reports whenever possible. But avoiding her proved impossible. One evening, as Leora sat alone in the mess hall nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee, Salus appeared silently beside her. Leora startled, nearly spilling the drink. "You seek solitude," Salus said, not aloud, but directly within Leora's thoughts. Her voice carried a melodic quality, soothing yet unsettling. "Yet solitude does not bring peace, does it?" Leora frowned, setting the mug down. "How do you know that?" "I see echoes," Salus replied cryptically, "fragments of who you are and who you were." The statement sent a chill running down Leora's spine. "What are you talking about?" Salus tilted her head, studying Leora with those luminous eyes. "There is much you do not remember, much you have forgotten, or perhaps been made to forget. Before Leora could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Lights flickered overhead as systems began malfunctioning without warning. Panels sparked, consoles went dark, and panicked shouts erupted from various sections of the vessel. Rushing to the bridge, Leora found chaos reigning supreme. Engineers scrambled to stabilize the power grid while Cade barked orders, his face flushed with frustration. This started when she came aboard. Cade accused, pointing an accusatory finger at Salis, who stood calmly near the entrance. "She's doing this. Some kind of sabotage." "No," Salis interjected, her mental voice cutting through the noise. "This is not my doing. But it is connected to you, Captain Vance." "To me?" Leora asked sharply, turning toward Salis. "Explain yourself." Salis hesitated, her expression unreadable. "Your awakening has begun. The echoes stir. They will not be silenced." The words hung heavy in the air, leaving Leora more confused than ever. Awakening. Echoes. None of it made sense. Yet, despite her skepticism, she couldn't deny the strange sensations creeping into her consciousness. Vivid flashes of landscapes she'd never visited, emotions she couldn't place, and whispers that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. As the crew worked tirelessly to restore order, Leora retreated to her quarters, locking the door behind her. Exhaustion weighed heavily on her shoulders, but sleep eluded her. Instead, she stared at the ceiling, replaying Salis's words in her mind. What did the alien mean by awakening? And why did she feel so drawn to someone, or something, that defied explanation? Hours later, when the ship finally stabilized, Leora emerged from her room to find Salis waiting for her in the corridor. The alien's presence was calming, almost reassuring, despite the turmoil she represented. For reasons Leora couldn't articulate, she trusted Salis, not fully, but enough to listen. "There is much you must learn," Salis said gently, "but trust is fragile. Will you let me guide you?" Leora hesitated, torn between caution and curiosity. Finally, she nodded. "Tell me what you know." And so began a fragile alliance, one built on unanswered questions and unspoken fears. As the days passed, Leora found herself spending more time with Salis, learning fragments of her story while grappling with her own growing unease. The crew watched warily, their suspicions mounting with each passing hour. But Leora couldn't turn away. Something about Salis called to her, stirring memories buried deep within her soul. Little did she know, these memories would soon unravel everything she thought she knew about herself and the universe around her. The days aboard the EOs blurred into one another as Leora delved deeper into conversations with Salis. Each encounter left her more unsettled than the last, yet she couldn't pull away. The alien's cryptic words lingered in her mind like echoes rebounding through an empty chamber. Fragments of who you are and who you were. What did that even mean? Was it possible for someone to carry remnants of lives they'd never lived? At first, Leora dismissed the flashes of memory as stress-induced hallucinations or overactive imagination wrought on by exhaustion. But the visions grew stronger, clearer, impossible to ignore. She saw herself standing on a world bathed in golden light, surrounded by towering crystalline trees that shimmered like liquid rainbows. In another, she stood beside a figure cloaked in shadows, their hands clasped tightly together as if sealing a vow. These moments felt real, visceral, as though she had truly experienced them. One evening, after another restless day filled with half-formed answers and mounting questions, Leora confronted Salis in the observation deck, a quiet space where the vastness of space stretched endlessly beyond the reinforced glass. Stars twinkled faintly against the black void, their distant glow offering little comfort. "You said something about echoes," Leora began, her voice low but firm. "What did you mean?" Salis turned to face her, her luminous eyes reflecting the starlight streaming through the viewport. "Echoes are fragments of your past selves," she explained, speaking directly into Leora's mind. "They are memories of lives you once led, long before this existence. Leora frowned, struggling to process the implications. Past selves. Are you saying I've lived before? In a way, yes, Salus replied. Her tone was calm, almost gentle, but there was an undercurrent of gravity beneath her words. Your soul has traveled across time and space, taking form in different bodies, different worlds. This is not uncommon among my people. Your people? Leora asked sharply. You think I'm one of you? Salus hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Not entirely. You were born human, shaped by the culture and experiences of this life. But deep within you lies a connection to my kind, a legacy passed down through countless generations. A part of you remembers what it means to be more. The revelation hit Leora like a tidal wave, leaving her breathless and disoriented. She wanted to deny it, to laugh off the absurdity of the claim. Yet something inside her resonated with Salus's explanation, a faint recognition buried beneath layers of doubt and disbelief. Why me? Leora whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Why now? Salus stepped closer, her presence enveloping Leora in a strange warmth. Because the echoes have begun to awaken. Something triggered them when we met on PX 427. Perhaps it was the ruins, imbued with energy from an ancient civilization. Or perhaps it was simply fate. As much as Leora wanted to reject the notion of destiny, she couldn't shake the feeling that Salus spoke the truth. The dreams, no, the memories, were becoming harder to dismiss. They weren't random images plucked from her subconscious. They carried weight, emotion, purpose, and they all pointed toward one undeniable conclusion. She was not who she thought she was. Over the next few days, Salus shared fragments of her own history, painting a picture of a civilization far older and more advanced than humanity. Her people had mastered the art of transferring consciousness across lifetimes, ensuring their survival even as physical forms perished. It was a gift and a curse. While it allowed them to endure, it also left behind lingering imprints of those who came before, echoes that could resurface unpredictably. These echoes can be overwhelming, Salus admitted during one of their private talks, especially for those unprepared to confront them. But they also hold great power, the ability to shape reality itself. Leora's stomach churned at the thought. Reality-shaping ability sounded less like science and more like myth. And yet, she couldn't deny the changes happening within her. Small things at first, moments of heightened awareness, fleeting sensations of energy coursing through her veins. Then came the dreams, vivid and immersive, pulling her into worlds both familiar and foreign. In one particularly vivid vision, Leora found herself standing on a battlefield strewn with debris and shattered bodies. Above her loomed a sky fractured by streaks of crimson lightning. Beside her stood a man clad in armor etched with glowing runes, his face obscured by a helmet. He spoke urgently, his voice distorted yet recognizable. "We cannot let them win," he said, gripping her arm tightly. "You must remember who you are." Before Leora could respond, the scene dissolved, leaving her gasping awake in her quarters. Her heart pounded wildly, sweat dampening her brow. She glanced around the dimly lit room, half expecting to find someone watching her. But she was alone, or so she thought. When she reported the dream to Salus later that morning, the alien nodded knowingly. "That was no mere dream," she said. "It was a memory, an echo of a life you once led. The man you saw, he was important to you. Together, you fought for something greater than yourselves. But why am I seeing these things now?" Leora demanded, frustration creeping into her voice. "Why does any of this matter?" Salus placed a hand gently on Leora's shoulder, her touch surprisingly warm despite her otherworldly appearance. "Because the echoes are trying to tell you something. They are pieces of a puzzle waiting to be solved. Once you piece them together, you will understand your true purpose." Leora stared at her, torn between skepticism and hope. Could it really be true? Was she destined for something beyond her wildest imagination? Or was she simply losing her grip on reality? The uncertainty gnawed at her, but one thing became clear. She couldn't turn back now. Whatever secrets lay hidden within her past selves, she needed to uncover them, not just for herself, but for the crew of the EOs, whose trust in her leadership wavered with each passing day. Cade's suspicions grew louder, Mira's curiosity burned brighter, and tensions aboard the ship reached a boiling point. Yet, amidst the chaos, Leora clung to one constant: Salus's unwavering belief in her potential. Whether friend or foe, the alien had ignited a spark within her, a desire to seek the truth, no matter how unsettling it might be. And so, with trepidation and determination, Leora resolved to embrace the echoes, letting them guide her toward answers she wasn't sure she was ready to face. The tension aboard the EOs had reached a breaking point. Days turned into weeks, and while Leora continued her private conversations with Salus, the crew grew increasingly uneasy. Equipment failures persisted despite the engineers' best efforts, and strange occurrences plagued the ship. Lights flickering without cause, whispers echoing through empty corridors, and inexplicable power surges that left everyone on edge. To many, it seemed as though the alien presence was at the heart of these disturbances. Lieutenant Cade Rennick's suspicions boiled over during a heated meeting in the briefing room. The table was cluttered with data pads and schematics, but no one paid attention to them. Instead, all eyes were fixed on Cade as he slammed his fist against the surface, startling those seated nearby. "This isn't coincidence anymore," he snapped, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "Every time something goes wrong, she's there, or close by. She's manipulating us, Captain. Plain and simple." Leora bristled at the accusation, her jaw tightening as she met Cade's fiery gaze. "Salus hasn't done anything to harm this ship or its crew," she countered sharply. "If anything, she's helping me understand what's happening to me, to us, to you." Cade shot back, leaning forward aggressively. "You're letting her isolate you from the rest of us, feeding you lies about echoes and past lives. Do you even hear yourself? This isn't science, it's superstition." Dr. Mira Hale raised a hand cautiously, attempting to mediate before the argument spiraled further out of control. "Cade has a point," she said diplomatically, though her tone remained neutral. "We can't ignore the correlation between Salus's arrival and the malfunctions, but dismissing her outright won't solve our problems either. We need answers, not accusations." "Answers we'll never get if we keep coddling her," Cade retorted, glaring at Mira before turning his attention back to Leora. "Captain, I'm asking you to reconsider trusting her blindly. For all we know, she's using you to achieve some unknown goal, and putting the entire mission at risk." The weight of Cade's words hung heavy in the air. Leora wanted to defend Salus, to explain how the alien's guidance had helped her make sense of the chaos swirling inside her mind. But doubt lingered beneath her resolve. What if Cade was right? What if Salus wasn't telling her everything? After the meeting adjourned, Leora retreated to her quarters, seeking solitude to process the storm of emotions brewing within her. Her head throbbed with conflicting thoughts, the echoes growing louder, more insistent, urging her to confront truths she wasn't ready to face. Yet, amidst the confusion, one thing remained clear: she couldn't abandon Salus. Not yet. There was still too much to learn, too many questions unanswered. When Salus appeared unbidden in her doorway later that evening, Leora didn't bother hiding her frustration. "Why is this happening?" she demanded, pacing the small confines of her room. "The malfunctions, the whispers, the dreams, they're tearing my crew apart. And now, Cade thinks I've lost my mind for trusting you." Salus watched her silently, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, her mental voice carried a quiet sadness. "I told you the echoes would awaken. They are not bound by your understanding of reality. They reshape it according to their will. Your awakening disrupts the balance around you. That is why the ship reacts." "But why does it have to happen here, on my ship?" Leora asked, her voice rising. "Why drag my crew into this?" "Because you cannot awaken alone," Salus replied firmly. "Your journey requires witnesses, those who will remember and carry forward what you learn. Without them, your transformation would mean nothing. Leora sank onto the edge of her bed, burying her face in her hands. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted softly. Every step feels like walking into darkness, and every time I try to explain, people look at me like I'm losing my grip. Salus knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. You are stronger than you believe. Trust yourself, and trust the echoes. They will guide you when others cannot. Despite her reassurances, Leora couldn't shake the feeling that she was being tested, not just by the echoes, but by those around her. Cade's distrust festered like an open wound, spreading unease among the crew. Whispers of mutiny began to circulate, fueled by fear and misinformation. Even Mira, usually the voice of reason, struggled to maintain neutrality as pressure mounted. One night, as Leora walked the dimly lit corridors of the EOs, she overheard fragments of hushed conversations. Crew members speculated about Salus's true intentions, some suggesting she might be a spy or saboteur sent by an unknown enemy. Others whispered about Leora herself, questioning whether their captain was still fit to lead. Each word felt like a dagger piercing her confidence. The breaking point came during another system failure, a critical malfunction that left the ship drifting dangerously close to a gravitational anomaly. Panic erupted across the bridge as alarms blared and warning lights flashed red. Engineers scrambled to stabilize the engines, but progress was slow and fraught with setbacks. As chaos reigned, Cade confronted Leora directly, his patience shattered. "This is your fault," he shouted, his face flushed with anger. "Ever since she came aboard, everything has gone wrong. If you won't act, then I will." Before Leora could respond, Cade issued orders to detain Salus, claiming it was necessary for the safety of the crew. Several officers hesitated, torn between loyalty to their captain and fear of escalating danger. Tensions flared as sides were drawn, dividing the once unified team. In the midst of the standoff, Salus stepped forward, her presence commanding silence. "Enough," she said aloud, her voice resonating with authority. "Your conflict serves no purpose. The echoes demand resolution, not division." Her words calmed the immediate panic, but the damage had been done. Trust fractured under the strain of suspicion and fear. As Leora stood frozen, unsure of how to repair what had broken, she realized that the greatest challenge lay not in confronting the echoes, but in holding together the fragile bonds of her crew. And somewhere deep within her, the echoes stirred again, whispering promises of strength and sacrifice. The air aboard the EOs was thick with tension, a palpable weight that pressed down on every member of the crew. After Cade's failed attempt to detain Salus, and the subsequent fallout, it became clear that the fragile unity of the team had shattered. Divisions ran deep, with some siding firmly behind Leora and others casting wary glances at both her and the enigmatic alien. Yet, amidst the turmoil, one thing remained constant. The echoes continued to grow louder within Leora, urging her toward answers she could no longer ignore. Salus approached Leora privately in the ship's observation deck, where the vast expanse of stars stretched endlessly beyond the reinforced glass. The alien's demeanor was calm but resolute, her luminous eyes reflecting the distant light of far-off suns. "It is time," she said simply, speaking directly into Leora's mind. "You must confront the echoes fully if you are to awaken." Leora hesitated, her hands gripping the railing as she stared out into the void. "What does that even mean?" she asked, her voice tinged with frustration. "How do I confront something I barely understand?" Salus stepped closer, her presence radiating an odd mix of warmth and gravity. "The echoes are fragments of your past lives, memories, emotions, experiences. To awaken is to merge with them, to reclaim what was lost. It will not be easy, but it is necessary." "And what happens after?" Leora pressed, turning to face her. "Will I finally know who, or what, I am?" Salus tilted her head slightly, studying her with an intensity that made Leora feel exposed. You will remember more than your identity. You will unlock abilities tied to your true nature, but such power comes with responsibility. Are you prepared for that burden? Leora wanted to say yes, to declare herself ready for whatever lay ahead, but doubt gnawed at her resolve. What if she wasn't strong enough? What if the echoes consumed her instead of guiding her? Still, she knew there was no turning back now. Every step forward brought new revelations and new challenges that demanded her full attention. "Tell me what I need to do," she said finally, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. Over the next several days, Salus guided Leora through a series of trials designed to help her connect with the echoes. Each trial took place in surreal dreamscapes created by the aliens' energy manipulation, environments that shifted and pulsed with lifelike vibrancy. These landscapes were populated by shadowy figures representing previous incarnations of Leora's essence, echoes of lives long forgotten. In one trial, Leora found herself standing on a windswept cliff overlooking an endless ocean. Waves crashed violently against jagged rocks below, their roar echoing like thunder. Before her stood a woman cloaked in flowing white robes, her face obscured by a hood. "Who are you?" Leora asked, her voice trembling. "I am part of you," the figure replied, her voice soft yet commanding. "A guardian of knowledge. Will you accept my wisdom?" Reluctantly, Leora reached out, placing her hand on the woman's shoulder. In an instant, memories flooded her mind. Visions of ancient rituals, sacred texts, and whispered incantations meant to harness the forces of creation. The experience left her breathless, her body humming with newfound understanding. Another trial plunged her into a dark forest, illuminated only by faintly glowing trees. Shadows darted between the trunks, whispering warnings and doubts. At the center of the woods stood a man clad in armor etched with glowing runes, the same figure from her earlier visions. His helmet concealed his face, but his voice carried recognition when he spoke. "You cannot run from who you are," he said, stepping closer until they stood face to face. "Embrace the echoes, or let them consume you." This time, Leora didn't hesitate. She embraced him fiercely, feeling waves of courage and determination flow into her. When she pulled away, the forest dissolved, leaving her standing alone in empty space. Each trial tested her in different ways, challenging her fears, questioning her motivations, and forcing her to confront truths she'd buried deep within herself. With each success, the echoes grew stronger, weaving themselves into the fabric of her being. By the end of the third trial, Leora felt a subtle shift, a connection forming between her present self and the lives she had lived before. But the final trial proved the most daunting. Salus led her into a dreamscape unlike any other, a desolate wasteland littered with ruins and broken statues. The sky above churned with crimson clouds, and the ground cracked beneath her feet, revealing veins of molten energy pulsing like arteries. At the heart of the wasteland stood a towering figure shrouded in darkness. Its presence radiated malice, its form shifting constantly, as though resisting definition. When it spoke, its voice echoed with countless others, overlapping in a cacophony of rage and sorrow. "You seek to awaken," it rumbled, its words reverberating through the air. "But awakening requires sacrifice. Are you willing to lose yourself entirely?" Leora froze, dread pooling in her stomach. The figure loomed closer, its shadow enveloping her. Memories surged unbidden. Moments of love, loss, triumph, and failure, all colliding in a torrent of emotion. For a moment, she faltered, overwhelmed by the sheer weight of it all. Then, a single thought pierced through the chaos. "I am more than this." Summoning every ounce of strength, Leora raised her hands, channeling the echoes coursing through her. Light erupted from her fingertips, driving back the shadows and forcing the figure to retreat. As the dreamscape dissolved around her, Leora awoke gasping in her quarters, her body drenched in sweat. But something was different. She could feel the echoes, not as separate entities, but as integral parts of herself. They no longer whispered. They sang, harmonizing with her thoughts and emotions. When Celis entered moments later, her expression softened with pride. "You have awakened," she said quietly. "The echoes are yours to command." Leora nodded, a sense of purpose settling over her. She still had much to learn, but for the first time, she felt whole, connected to something greater than herself. And as she gazed out at the stars once more, she knew her journey was far from over. The transformation within Leora was undeniable, though subtle at first. She carried herself differently now, her movements more deliberate, her presence commanding a quiet authority that drew attention without demanding it. Yet beneath this newfound confidence lay an undercurrent of unease. Awakening to the echoes had unlocked a reservoir of power she barely understood, and with each passing day, the weight of responsibility grew heavier. Celis remained by her side, guiding her through exercises designed to hone her abilities. These sessions took place in secluded corners of the Eos, away from prying eyes. To the crew, it seemed as though Leora and Celis were simply deepening their bond, a notion that fueled further distrust among those who already viewed the alien with suspicion. But for Leora, these moments were far from ordinary. They were trials of endurance, focus, and willpower, pushing her to embrace the full potential of her awakened self. One evening, during one such session, Celis led Leora to the observation deck. The room was dimly lit, the stars outside casting faint glimmers across the floor. Celis gestured toward the center of the space, where a faint blue glow began to materialize, an orb of energy hovering just above the ground. "This is your final test," Celis said, her voice resonating softly in Leora's mind. "You must merge fully with the echoes. Only then can you master the abilities they grant." Leora hesitated, staring at the glowing orb. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat, drawing her gaze with an irresistible pull. "What happens if I fail?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You do not have the luxury of failure," Celis replied bluntly. "The echoes are fragments of your essence. They cannot be ignored or suppressed indefinitely. If you do not reclaim them, they will consume you." The starkness of the warning sent a shiver down Leora's spine. Still, she nodded, steeling herself for what lay ahead. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, placing her hands on either side of the orb. As soon as her skin made contact, a surge of energy coursed through her body, flooding her senses with vivid memories and emotions. The world around her dissolved into a kaleidoscope of shifting landscapes, each representing a fragment of her past lives. She found herself standing on a battlefield strewn with debris, the air thick with smoke and the cries of the wounded. Beside her stood the armored figure from her earlier visions, his face still obscured but his voice unmistakable. "You faced me before," he said, his tone carrying both pride and sorrow. "But now you must face the others, the ones who resist." Before Leora could respond, the scene shifted again. She was now in a grand hall filled with towering statues, each carved to resemble individuals she instinctively recognized as her past selves. Some smiled warmly, offering words of encouragement. Others glared coldly, their voices overlapping in a chorus of disapproval. "You abandoned us," one statue hissed, its stone eyes gleaming with malice. "You let our sacrifices mean nothing." "I didn't abandon anyone," Leora shot back, her voice trembling with anger and guilt. "I'm here now. Isn't that enough?" "It is not about being present," another statue interjected, its voice softer but no less stern. "It is about accepting all parts of yourself, the light and the dark, the triumphs and the failures." As the statues continued to berate her, Leora felt the pressure mounting. Doubt crept into her mind, threatening to overwhelm her resolve. Was she truly capable of embracing everything she had been, or would she crumble under the weight of her own history? Then, amidst the chaos, a familiar voice broke through, a melodic hum that soothed her frayed nerves. It was Celis, speaking directly into her thoughts. "Do not fight them. Listen. Learn. They are not your enemies. They are reflections of your journey." Taking the shaky breath, Leora closed her eyes and focused on the voices swirling around her. Instead of resisting, she opened herself to their messages, allowing their pain, wisdom, and strength to flow into her. Slowly, the oppressive atmosphere began to lift, replaced by a sense of clarity and purpose. When she reopened her eyes, the statues had transformed into shimmering figures of light. Their expressions softened with understanding. One by one, they approached her, merging with her essence until only silence remained. Back in the observation deck, Leora stumbled backward, gasping for air as the orb dissipated into nothingness. Her body trembled with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with determination. Salus watched her closely, nodding approvingly. "You have succeeded," she said. "The echoes are now part of you, and their power is yours to wield." Leora flexed her fingers experimentally, feeling a strange warmth coursing through her veins. For the first time, she understood what Salus meant by shaping reality. With a mere thought, she could manipulate energy, bend matter, and alter the environment around her. But with this power came a sobering realization. She was no longer entirely human. Word of her transformation spread quickly among the crew, sparking a mix of awe and fear. Some marveled at her newfound abilities, while others saw her as a threat, a being whose loyalties might sway toward Salus rather than humanity. Lieutenant Cade Rennick seized upon this sentiment, rallying those who shared his concerns. "She's changed," he declared during a heated meeting in the briefing room. "She's not the captain we followed anymore. What happens when she decides we're expendable? When she sides with her?" Leora listened silently as accusations flew, her heart heavy with betrayal. She had sacrificed everything to protect the crew, to guide them through dangers they couldn't comprehend. Yet, here they were, questioning her every move. Before tensions could escalate further, Mira Hale intervened, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We're all scared," she admitted, addressing the group. "But turning against each other won't solve anything. Leora has proven time and again that she puts this crew first. If we abandon her now, we lose any chance of surviving whatever comes next." Her words struck a chord, silencing the dissent, for now. But Leora knew the fragile peace wouldn't last. Trust had been broken, and rebuilding it would require more than promises or reassurances. Later that night, as she stood alone in the observation deck, Salus joined her once more. "They fear what they do not understand," she said gently. "But fear is temporary. Your actions will define how they see you." Leora sighed, leaning against the railing as she gazed out at the stars. "And what if my actions aren't enough? What if I can't save them?" Salus placed a hand on her shoulder, her touch radiating warmth. "Saving them begins with saving yourself. You are stronger than you believe, Leora Vance, stronger than even I imagined." With those words lingering in her mind, Leora resolved to prove her worth, not just to the crew, but to herself. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them head-on, guided by the echoes that now sang within her soul. The Eos hummed with a quiet tension, its corridors alive with whispered conversations and wary glances. Despite Mira's attempt to quell the unrest, distrust lingered like a shadow over the crew. Leora could feel it in every interaction, a subtle shift in tone, a fleeting hesitation before speaking her name. She understood their fear. She had once been one of them, grounded in the tangible, predictable world of science and logic. But now she was something else entirely, a bridge between humanity and a power they couldn't comprehend. Salus remained steadfast by her side, offering guidance as Leora learned to wield her newfound abilities. With each passing day, her control grew stronger. She discovered she could manipulate energy fields, stabilize failing systems aboard the ship, and even mend minor injuries with a touch. Yet for all her progress, there was an unspoken truth hanging between them. Salus hadn't revealed everything. The alien's evasive answers only deepened Leora's unease. One evening, after another grueling session of practice, Salus finally spoke the words Leora had been dreading. "Your awakening is complete," she said softly, her voice resonating directly in Leora's mind. But your journey does not end here. Leora froze, lowering the glowing orb of energy she had been shaping in her hands. What do you mean? She asked cautiously. I thought mastering the echoes was the goal. It was only the beginning, Salis replied, her luminous eyes locking onto Leora's. You are more than just a vessel for the echoes. You are a key, a link between my people's legacy and the future of existence itself. The weight of the statement hit Leora like a tidal wave. A key. For what? Salis hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Centuries ago, my civilization created a way to transcend mortality, not through physical immortality, but by transferring consciousness across time and space. It allowed us to endure beyond death, ensuring our survival no matter the cost. But such power came at a price: instability. The process left behind lingering imprints, echoes, that could resurface unpredictably, disrupting balance wherever they emerge. And I'm one of those echoes? Leora asked, her voice trembling slightly. No, Salis corrected gently. You are unique. When you were born human, part of my people's essence found its way into your soul, a fragment of our collective consciousness seeking renewal. That fragment has awakened within you, granting you abilities tied to our legacy. But it also means you carry a responsibility to safeguard the echoes and guide them toward harmony. Leora shook her head, overwhelmed by the enormity of the task. Why me? Why now? Because the echoes need someone who can walk between worlds, Salis explained. Someone who understands both sides, the fragility of humanity and the boundless potential of my kind. You are that person, Leora Vance. You always have been. As much as Leora wanted to deny it, she couldn't ignore the truth echoing within her own heart. The flashes of memories, the whispers of forgotten lives. They weren't random fragments but pieces of a greater whole. And now she was being called upon to unite them. The final test came sooner than expected. As the EOs prepared to depart PS-427, a catastrophic malfunction threatened to tear the ship apart. Power surged uncontrollably, systems overloaded, and the crew scrambled to contain the chaos. Cade seized the moment, rallying his supporters to confront Leora directly. This is your fault, he shouted, pointing an accusatory finger at her. Ever since she came aboard, nothing has gone right. If we don't act now, this ship, and everyone on it, will be destroyed. Before Leora could respond, the lights flickered violently, plunging the bridge into darkness. Alarms blared deafeningly, and the ship shuddered as if caught in a gravitational pull. Panic erupted among the crew, but Leora stood firm, closing her eyes and focusing inward. The echoes responded immediately, surging through her veins like liquid fire. She raised her hands, channeling their energy outward. Around her, the chaos began to subside. Power stabilized, systems rebooted, and the ship steadied itself. When the lights returned, the crew stared at her in stunned silence, their faces etched with awe and fear. Cade stepped forward again, his expression torn between defiance and disbelief. What? What are you? I'm still me, Leora replied, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. But I'm also more. And if you want to survive, you'll trust me. Her words silenced any further dissent. Whatever doubts the crew harbored, they paled in comparison to the undeniable proof of her abilities. Slowly, reluctantly, they rallied behind her, united by a shared desire to make it home alive. With the immediate crisis averted, Leora turned her attention to Salis. You said I'm a key, she began, her tone firm but tinged with sadness. Does that mean you'll leave now? Salis nodded, her expression serene yet tinged with regret. My purpose here is fulfilled. Your awakening ensures the echoes will find balance once more. But know this, you are never alone. The echoes will always guide you. Before Leora could protest, Salis placed a hand on her forehead, flooding her mind with visions of distant stars, ancient civilizations, and infinite possibilities. Then, with a soft hum of energy, the alien vanished, leaving behind only the faintest trace of her presence. As the EOS departed PX 427, Leora stood alone in the observation deck, gazing out at the endless expanse of space. Her reflection in the glass was unchanged, yet she felt profoundly different, as though she had transcended the boundaries of self and become something greater. Behind her, the crew worked together with renewed focus, their unity restored under her leadership. They still feared her, but they trusted her too, a fragile balance she vowed to honor. And as the ship sailed onward, carrying its passengers toward Earth, Leora heard Salus's final whisper echo softly in her mind. "You were always meant to transcend."